The morning sun filtered through the leafy trees of the small American town, creating a pattern of light and shadow on the sidewalk. Clara stood in front of the house she had known since childhood, breathing deeply as she looked at the suitcases loaded in the trunk of her car. The vehicle, an old blue sedan that had seen better days, was filled with dreams and a few cartons of eggs, an unusual gift from his mother, Mary. Clara smiled as she remembered the good-natured words she would exchange with her mother before leaving. "Maybe one day, when I come back rich and famous, you will be able to eat eggs I made in a fancy cafe." Mary, a woman with gentle eyes and gray hair, approached, a nervous smile on her lips. "And I'll be here, waiting for your return, with an apron and a dream of eggs Benedict," she replied, winking playfully. Clara knew the fear that was hidden behind that smile. It was her first time venturing away from home, and the idea of leaving her mother made her apprehensive. However, the flame of independence burned in his heart. "I'm going to miss you, Mom," Clara said, wrapping her arms around her mother's neck in a tight hug. "But this is just the beginning. I promise I will surprise you." Mary squeezed Clara, visibly moved. "I know you will. Just don't forget who you are. And please take care of yourself." With one last look at the house that had been her home, Clara got into the car. The engine rumbled softly, like an invitation to the adventure that awaited her. As she drove down the road, she felt the mixture of excitement and fear wash over her. The horizon stretched out before him, a blank canvas ready to be filled with new experiences. After a few hours on the road, Clara decided to stop at a gas station. The place was simple, with a small convenience store and an air of nostalgia that made her feel at home. While filling up the car, he noticed a familiar figure approaching. It was Jake, a childhood friend I hadn't seen in years. He had a wide smile and a curious look. "Clara. Is that really you?" exclaimed Jake, with genuine surprise. "What are you doing here?" "Hi, Jake. I'm going to the big city. I'm looking for new opportunities," replied Clara, feeling a warmth in her heart when she saw a familiar face. "And you? What have you been doing?" "Ah, you know how it is, life goes on. But you always dreamed of being an artist, right? This city is going to be a great challenge," Jake said, placing his hand on his chin, as if thinking about something deeper. "Don't forget to take care of yourself. The city can be a complicated place." I know, Clara said, laughing nervously. "But I'm ready to face anything. And who knows, maybe I'll come back with a gallery full of my works. Just don't forget me when you're famous," Jake teased, winking. "If you need anything, let me know. I'm here, and I can help you find your way around." "Thanks, Jake. I will remember that," replied Clara, feeling grateful for the friendship that still lasted. After a few more words, they said goodbye, and Clara went on her way. Before we continue, we would like to ask you a favor. If you are enjoying this video and want to see more content like this, don't forget to click the subscribe button and activate the bell. This way, you don't miss any updates from us. Your support helps us bring you the best content possible. Continuing. The road stretched out before her, and soon she saw the first signs of the big city. The tall buildings and bright lights seemed to promise adventure, but also a certain fear of the unknown. Clara felt her heart quicken as she approached the city's entrance, blending into the crowd of cars and people, each with their own stories and dreams. While driving down the main avenue, a familiar car caught his attention. She hesitated for a moment, but then moved on. The city was alive, and Clara was about to write her own chapter amid all the hubbub. With dreams pulsing in her chest, she felt ready to face whatever came to her door, even if her family's past was lurking in the shadows. Clara settled into her new apartment, a modest studio on the third floor of an old building, whose walls were thin and let out the sounds of life pulsing in the street below. Sunlight filtered through the linen curtains, illuminating the small table where she would spend hours drawing and dreaming. The smell of the fresh coffee she had prepared mixed with the fragrance of the flowers she had bought at the local market. She had chosen a small vase of yellow daisies, her favorites, as a reminder of home. "It's just the beginning," she muttered to herself, as she looked out the window. The city vibrated with an energy that made her feel alive, but also left her restless. Clara knew she needed to work hard at the cafe to support herself, but her heart longed for something more: art. It was in this space between dream and reality that she found herself, a delicate balance that encouraged her to continue. The next day, Clara put on her best blouse and went out for her first shift at Café de Esquina, a place known for its loyal customers and welcoming atmosphere. Upon entering, she was greeted by Marlene, the manager, a middle-aged woman with curly hair and a warm smile. "You must be Clara. The only new employee I didn't get to meet before. Come, I'll show you how it all works." As Marlene guided her through the kitchen and around the counter, Clara felt her nervousness dissolve amid the aroma of fresh bread and roasted coffee. "If you need help, don't hesitate to ask. We are a family here," said Marlene, winking. The day passed in a whirlwind of requests and laughter, and Clara began to feel that this cafe could be her temporary home. But, deep down, the flame of ambition continued to burn. At the end of the day, while cleaning the tables, a lively conversation between two customers caught his attention. "Did you see that the gallery is promoting an exhibition of new artists? They say Robert will be there," said a woman with short, colorful hair. "Robert? Robert? Her mother's ex-boyfriend?" The man replied, surprised. "He's successful, but his history with her family is complicated, isn't it?" Clara froze, the sponge she was holding slipping from her hands. Robert. The name echoed in his mind like a bell. The man who had been her mother's youthful love, now a renowned artist. Her heart raced, mixing curiosity and a shadow of fear. What would he have to do with your life now? That night, as he tried to concentrate on his sketches, Robert's idea wouldn't leave his head. He remembered how his mother spoke of him, always with a mixture of affection and pain. He was complicated, Mary would say, as if she were trying to protect Clara from something she didn't yet understand. The next morning, Clara decided to go to the exhibition. "I felt like I needed to see Robert, I needed to understand who he was now." When he arrived at the gallery, the place was full of people, which increased his anxiety. The artwork that adorned the walls reflected Robert's soul, with vibrant colors and intriguing shapes. Clara was carried away by the beauty, but her mind was occupied with questions. And then, there he was. Robert, in the flesh, surrounded by admirers, his undeniable charm attracting everyone around him. He was even more handsome than Clara remembered, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and a smile that lit up the room. She hesitated for a moment, but the urge to get closer was stronger. "Clara." He recognized her before she could introduce herself. "How long? You have grown up. It's good to see you." His tone was soft, but there was a gleam in his eyes that intrigued her. "Hi, Robert. It's good to be here," she replied, fighting shyness. "His works are incredible." "Thanks. I'm glad you came. I felt like you needed to see this. How is your mother?" The question was casual, but Clara realized there was a subtext. "She is fine. Working hard," she replied, without elaborating. "And you? What is the life of a famous artist like?" Robert laughed, but there was a veiled concern in his expression. "It's challenging but rewarding. You know, Clara, I've always admired your talent. You should dedicate yourself more to art." His words shook her heart. "I'm trying," Clara said, her gaze fixed on her most recent work, a painting that seemed to capture the essence of the city itself. "But I'm still discovered. Don't worry. The important thing is not to give up on your dreams." He smiled again, almost as if he was trying to encourage her to follow a path that he himself was unable to follow. As they talked, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more between them, something that her mother hadn't revealed. What was this secret that hung in the air? And why did Robert's presence leave her so confused? Clara sat at the table in the small cafe where she worked, the morning light filtering through the windows, casting dancing shadows across the wooden floor. While he was serving a cappuccino to a customer, his mind was far away, immersed in thoughts about Robert and what his mother could have hidden. The aroma of fresh coffee and the murmur of conversations around her could barely distract her. She couldn't understand how a simple reunion could have triggered so many conflicting emotions. "You need to find out the truth, Clara," she murmured to herself, as she remembered the clandestine conversation she had overheard between Robert and his friend. That mention of dark secrets followed her like a shadow. As soon as the shift ended, Clara decided it was time to investigate the relationship between her mother and Robert. With his heart racing, he went to the apartment that shared his dreams and desires. There, she began going through boxes of old photos that her mother had saved. Among the smiles and familiar poses, she found a small stack of black and white photos that made her stop. "That's my mother, and who is that man?" he thought, admiring the image of a young Mary next to a charismatic man who he immediately recognized as Robert. The two looked happy, laughing and having fun on a picnic. Clara felt a lump in her throat. What could have happened to make those smiles become distant memories? That same night, while the city pulsed outside, Clara dug deeper into the boxes, finding yellowed letters that revealed a story of troubled love, full of promises and disappointments. "Why didn't my mother ever talk about this?" he asked, a mix of sadness and anger boiling in his chest. The next day brought an anonymous message that made his heart race. "Robert is not who he appears to be," the cryptic text read. Clara froze, her mind spinning with possibilities. What did this mean? How did anyone know she was investigating? Distrust began to spread like an inkblot, obscuring any consideration she had about Robert being a good influence. "You'd better keep your distance from him," he thought, as a chill ran down his spine. But the truth is that she was torn. There was something about him that attracted her, a magnetism that made her want to get closer, even in the midst of the whirlwind of feelings. While Clara struggled with her emotions, at home, Mary felt the weight of secrets from the past suffocating her. Sitting at the kitchen table, she glanced at the clock, anguish building in her chest. What was the daughter discovering? What if Clara was faced with the truth she had tried to hide for so long? The idea that the past could come back to haunt her was terrifying. "Clara, you need to protect yourself," Mary thought, unable to share her concerns with her daughter. If she only knew what really happened. The silence of the house seemed to scream, every corner filled with unspoken memories and buried secrets. That night, Clara decided she could no longer hide. With renewed determination, he picked up the phone and dialed Robert's number. Your heart was pounding as you waited for him to answer. His voice on the other end of the line brought a mix of relief and tension. "Hi, Clara. How are you?" Robert asked, his voice soft and engaging. "I need to talk to you." "About my mother," Clara said, feeling the weight of the words. "Sure, we can meet." "Where do you want me to go?" he replied, the warmth in his voice seemingly unwavering. "Let's meet at the park tomorrow afternoon," Clara decided, knowing she needed to better understand the connection between them. As he hung up, he felt a mix of anticipation and fear. Whatever happened, she knew she could no longer ignore the secrets that permeated her family. The truth was about to emerge, and Clara was determined to face it head-on. Clara was nervous as she got ready for the art party. The blue dress she had chosen fit her body perfectly, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Loud music and lively conversations echoed in the room, but her mind was far away, focused only on Robert. The reunion promised to be explosive, and anxiety pulsed through their veins. Upon arriving at the location, a gallery full of colorful and vibrant works, Clara felt the weight of the gazes. She spotted Robert in a corner, surrounded by admirers who praised him for his art. He was charismatic, as always, and his smile made her heart skip a beat, even though she was determined to confront him. With a deep sigh, Clara walked over to him. "Robert," she said, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. "We need to talk." He turned around, his expression quickly changing from surprise to a warm smile. "Clara. Good to see you here. Your mother always talked about you. How are you?" "I'm not here for small talk," Clara replied firmly. "I want to know the truth about you and my mother." Robert's expression became more serious. "You don't know what happened," he stated, looking straight into your eyes. "I've always loved your mother, but things aren't that simple." "Then explain it to me," Clara insisted, crossing her arms. "What separated you?" He hesitated, insecurity visible in his gaze. "There was an event, something terrible that happened. I don't want you to see her in a negative light. Your mother is a strong and courageous woman. But she's hiding something from me," Clara snapped, frustration showing in her voice. "And I need to know what it is." "Clara, I can't talk about this in a place like this. Shall we talk in private?" Robert suggested, looking around as if he was afraid someone would overhear them. Resisting the urge to agree, Clara shook her head. "No, I want you to tell me here and now. I always loved your mother," he began, voice lower. "But there was jealousy, lies, and a betrayal that separated us. I didn't want you to know, but I was manipulated. There were people who didn't want us to be happy." "Manipulated?" Clara repeated, in disbelief. "By whom? Why didn't you look for her later?" Robert looked down, lost in his thoughts. "Because I thought she was better off without me. I saw her move forward, and I didn't want to get in her way. But I never stopped loving her." At this moment, the tension in the air was palpable. Clara wanted to believe his words, but the pain and confusion were too great. "You don't understand, do you? You are a stranger to me. All these years, and I don't know who you really are." With an intense look, Robert replied, "I am the man who loved her. And I still love it. But what happened in the past, that's complicated." Clara was about to retort when her cell phone vibrated in her pocket. It was a message from his mother. "Clara, I need to talk to you. I'm on my way to town. Don't get too involved with Robert." The pressure in Clara's chest increased. "Why are you coming?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I came because I heard you were here with him. And that worries me," Mary replied, the tension in her voice unmistakable. Clara looked at Robert, who was watching her with a mix of concern and hope. "I need to go," she said, turning to leave the gallery. "Clara." Robert called out to her, but she didn't look back. Confusion and anger consumed her. What else was your mother hiding? Why was she so frightened by Robert's presence? Upon arriving home, Clara found Mary waiting, with a worried face. She sat down, trying to organize her thoughts. "Mom, what's going on between you and Robert? What didn't you tell me?" Mary sighed, looking distant. "Clara, I don't want you to get hurt. The past is complicated and I don't know if I'm ready to talk about it. But I need to know. You can't leave me in the dark," Clara pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. "It's not that simple, my daughter," Mary replied, her voice strained. "I just want to protect you." "Protect from what?" Clara asked, frustration growing. "You are taking me away from the truth. And that only increases my curiosity." Mary stood up, her gaze steady. "Because I know you wouldn't understand. It's better this way." Clara felt her heart squeeze. "No, it's not better that way. I want to know the truth, even if it hurts. You need to trust me, Mom." Silence settled between them, and Clara realized that the battle for what was hidden was just beginning. Clara had spent the night awake, her heart racing as she leafed through the yellowing pages of her mother's diary. It was an intimate and painful account, full of emotions she never imagined her mother had kept. The smell of old paper and Mary's delicate handwriting transported her to a time when life seemed simpler, but the words revealed the complexity of a love that had been devastated by a scandal involving Robert. Clara stopped at a passage where her mother described a tense encounter, the pain and betrayal that ran through its lines. "He's not who you think he is, Clara," the young woman muttered to herself, as anger and confusion bubbled up inside her. The diary's revelations left her uneasy. What exactly had Robert done? And why had her mother never talked about it? Clara felt like the piece of the puzzle was close to fitting together, but the edges still seemed blurry. Determined, Clara decided to confront Robert again. With the diary in hand, she headed to the art gallery where he worked. The atmosphere was busy, with people admiring the works, but Clara was not interested in the paintings. His mind was focused on the conversation he was about to have. When she saw Robert, she took a deep breath and walked over, the diary hidden under her arm. "We need to talk, Robert," Clara said, her voice firm but with a hint of vulnerability. He looked at her, surprised, but nodded. "Of course, Clara. What happened?" "I read my mother's diary," she began, the intensity of her gaze never leaving his. "I know about the scandal you caused. How could you do this to her?" Robert seemed to hesitate, the expression on his face changing from confidence to unexpected vulnerability. "Clara, I didn't want things to have turned out like this. At that time, I was young and naive. The circumstances were complicated." "Complicated? You destroyed her life!" Clara exclaimed, emotions boiling. "You deceived her, and by extension you deceived me too. How can I trust you now? I know it's difficult, but I've changed." "I learned from my mistakes," Robert said, his tone full of sincerity. "What happened was manipulated by other people. I never wanted to hurt Mary, much less you." "Manipulated? By whom? What do you mean?" Clara questioned, intrigued, but still suspicious. "That's not something I can discuss here," he replied, looking around, as if afraid someone would overhear them. "But I can promise you that my intention was never to cause pain. I really loved your mother." Clara took a step away, confused. The internal struggle between her desire to believe Robert and the pain of his revelation consumed her. "Love is not enough, Robert. What you did had consequences. You can't just go back and expect everything to be fine again." Silence fell between them, heavy and awkward. Clara felt that the words they exchanged were more than just accusations, they were reflections of a past that still haunted. At that moment, the gallery door opened and Mary entered. Clara felt her heart race when she saw her mother, and the tension between them seemed palpable. Mary looked at Clara, then at Robert, and a shadow of concern crossed her face. "Mom," Clara said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "We are talking." Mary approached, her gaze settling on Robert. "Clara, what's going on here?" "I was just explaining some things to your daughter," Robert replied, but the tension in his voice was clear. "This is no place for this conversation," Mary said, her eyes narrowing. "Let's go home." Clara watched her mother position herself between her and Robert, a protective gesture that made her feel a mix of gratitude and frustration. "Mom, I need to understand. There are things that haven't been said, and I can't go on like this." Mary hesitated, but Clara's look disarmed her. She knew the truth needed to come out. "Let's talk, then. But not here." The three figures were immersed in a whirlwind of contradictory emotions, each carrying their secrets and wounds. What unfolded next could change everything, but Clara already knew there would be no going back. Truths needed to be revealed, even if they were painful. Clara sat on the edge of the bed in her small apartment, her hands shaking slightly as she held her mother's diary. The words he had read still echoed in his mind, and the confusion was palpable. What else didn't she know? The truth was getting closer, and a part of her wanted to unearth every layer of that dark past, while another part feared what she might find. The door suddenly opened, and Mary walked in, her face etched with worry. Clara looked up, and the tension between them was almost visible, like a thread about to snap. "Clara, we need to talk," Mary said, her voice hesitant. "Talk? About what, Mom? About how you kept all this from me? About how Robert destroyed our lives?" Clara couldn't contain her indignation. "Or are you going to give me another one of your evasions?" Mary closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. "I didn't want you to get involved in this story. I thought I could protect you." "Protect? You just kept me in the dark." Clara stood up, frustration making her voice echo throughout the small space. "What else are you hiding from me? What did Robert really do?" Before Mary could respond, the doorbell rang, interrupting the tense atmosphere. Clara went to the door, opening it with a sudden movement. To her surprise, Robert was there, with an expression that mixed concern and determination. "Clara, I need to talk to you." "It's urgent," he said, looking intensely into her eyes. Mary stood tense in the background, his presence seeming to bring up all the ghosts of the past. "You don't have anything to say that I want to hear," Clara replied, but curiosity compelled her to listen to him. "No, wait. I was manipulated. There is someone behind all of this, someone who wanted revenge on your family," Robert explained, his voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted any of this to happen." Clara felt butterflies in her stomach. "Revenge? On who? What are you saying?" "I can't go into details right now, but I know you always believed that I was the villain of the story. But the truth is that there was a greater force behind the curtains, someone who wanted to separate your mother from me and did everything he could to ruin our lives," Robert replied, his gaze fixed on Clara. Mary, upon hearing this, approached, her eyes wide. "Robert, no. You can't. I need her to know, Mary. Clara, your mother had a very close friend. She was always jealous of her talent, of everything she achieved. This woman, she did everything to separate us," Robert continued, his voice now lower, but filled with urgency. Clara blinked, trying to put the pieces together. "Who is this woman? Why don't we ever hear about her?" "Her name is Vanessa. She's always been in the shadows, doing her part to sabotage your mother. When I found myself involved with you, she saw an opportunity. And I was naive enough not to notice," he said, the weight of guilt in your words. The revelation hit Clara like a blow. "Vanessa. So it was her. I remember her, a woman who always thought she was doing favors for my mother, but there was always something strange about her attention," Clara murmured, the truth beginning to unfold in her mind. Mary took a deep breath, her face pale. "Clara, I didn't know. When I separated from Robert, it was as if a veil had been lifted. But I never thought she was capable of something so cruel." "We need to confront her," Clara said, determination rising within her. "If she was responsible for all this, it's time to expose her." Mary looked at Robert, and then at Clara. "Yes. If this really happened, we need to end this once and for all. For ourselves and for everything we lost." Robert nodded. "I am with you. I will not let my past destroy your future." Together, mother and daughter joined forces with Robert, the tension that once separated them now turning into an unbreakable bond. The road ahead would be challenging, but they had finally found the truth they had been searching for. The villain was about to be unmasked, and Clara, now stronger and more determined than ever, was ready to face whatever came. If you liked the content, don't forget to leave a like, a comment and share with your friends. Your comment is essential for the growth of the channel. And look at this video that appears on the screen. See you later.